Hello, everyone. Welcome to Why Wellness. I'm Gina Rose, a certified personal trainer and fitness nutrition specialist, and I created this platform for so many of us to share our why. Oftentimes, we hear this buzzword question in the health and fitness industry, and I couldn't think of a better way than to compile our stories right here on my podcast, Why Wellness. We're here discussing inspiring, relatable, and motivating stories from health and fitness professionals across various platforms. Please subscribe, rate, and share my podcast. It would mean so much to me. I can't wait to share this next episode with you. Dr. Tom Ingegno joining us today. He has been providing customized whole being acupuncture and integrative medicine treatments for a wide range of health conditions since 2001. Tom is passionate about providing treatment that is aimed not only at alleviating symptoms, but improving his patients' overall quality of life. He has been nominated by City Paper in 2010 as Best Acupuncturist in Baltimore and owner of City Integrative Health. Welcome in, Dr. Tom.
Thank you for having me, Gina.
Yes, this is super exciting because I know that this is going to be a topic that I can learn about as well because, most of the individuals that I've been talking to have been primarily in the fitness field, so personal trainers, coaches, things like that. And this podcast is really about the wellness industry overall. So whether that's mental health, whether that's physical well-being, and we can really tap into something totally different here with the things that you do, like acupuncture and cryotherapy and all of that fun stuff. And I know you're also an author, so we'll get into your publications and all of the cool things that we can talk about. So to get us started, if you can think of a time when you got into this field or what kind of led you down this path to kick us off, that would be awesome.
Oh, so you want the backstory?
Yeah, the backstory is where it's at.
I'm going to give you a complete but relatively condensed one. I feel like when you're growing up and you start to hear, oh, you're smart, you should do this, you should do that, it tends to go a couple of different ways. Medical doctor is always like one of the big ones, right? Make mom and dad proud kind of thing, make grandma and grandpa proud. And I wanted to help people. I was interested in it. We have a lot of healthcare professionals in my family. And that wasn't such a bad thing for me. My grandfather was a pharmacist. And I have one specific memory that actually I blocked out for some time until the last maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I went, oh my God, that actually happened. One day he was counting out pills. And old school, before they had the machine just drop them into a bottle, you had this little tablet where you'd slide the ones you wanted into a little trough. And then the other ones you would dump back into this master bottle before you filled the patient's prescription. Mm-hmm. So he was counting out these pills, and he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, these pills are $5 a piece. This guy, who happened to be a day laborer, had to take 3 of them a day for the rest of his life. And this is back probably early 90s. And he looked at me and he goes, do you know how much that costs a month? And that's some simple math, but it was significant, especially for somebody that wasn't making much money. And he goes, there's side effects with this. And he kind of got into the whole thing. And then he said, there's just got to be a better way. And this is a person I idolized, who then put it in my head that I needed to find that. Right. I went pre-med in college and, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. And then due to some financial aid changes, I ended up I left Maryland. I was at Loyola for 2 years, and I ended up going to New York Institute of Technology to roll into their osteopathic program. So I would have been a DO, not an MD. In a hospital, you can't tell the damn difference. I got a postcard between semesters of my junior year for an acupuncture school. It was for an open house. I went to that open house, and 2 weeks later I was enrolled in the acupuncture program.
So that postcard really spoke to you.
It was always something that I was interested in. I was thinking differently. I took a Tai Chi elective. And one of the things that always strikes me about East Asian medicine as a whole is it doesn't matter the modality, right? All of these principles of balance and getting to the source of the issue when we're dealing with health is the main concern. So, we hear a lot of noise, we see a lot of symptoms, but what is really screaming out? What's really talking? And then how do we balance that out? And we're seeing that movement happen currently in functional medicine. Functional medicine, in my mind, is a modern adaptation of traditional principles, right? How far back in that chain can we go to flip the switch and get people working better? And, all of that relates back to this idea. I know you said whole being. I'm really trying to make that a thing, because when we talk about whole body, we're still teasing out a part, right? Your thoughts, your emotions, your psychology, that's all tied to your body, right? And how many times have you felt like shit? Oh, sorry, can I curse? I just
yeah, go for it. I have to click a button that says there's language.
Oh my God! Just
before posting it, it'll be
fine. I'll cut that part out. But if within that you move a muscle, you change a thought, kind of thing, is an old saying I heard a lot. But the same is true for our in reverse, right? Sometimes we feel physical pain because our mind is hurting, or we're having an emotional breakdown, right? We get a broken heart, we feel that. So approaching the whole being as one single unit is not anything new. It's not radical, but we separate things out all the time, right? We're starting to see this convergence where personal training, health, and fitness, we use that term simultaneously, but it's not that your doctor's putting you on a workout program. Right? And it's not that your psychologist is going to go, hey, you know what? You really should start doing some ab work or something, and there needs to be more of that, right? Even today, dentistry, those are medical, that's a medical practice, right? But it's completely removed from the rest of medicine.
And we're actually gonna talk about that. I actually have a friend who is a dentist, and he and I are gonna get together for a future podcast to talk about that, because I'm trying to tie in all of these different wellness fields that people don't necessarily think of right away, because it's not like a gym setting, right? And all of it. And now that mindfulness is becoming way more talked about these days, like psychology and speaking to psychotherapists and things like that, just really trying to bring everything through. But when you got that postcard for acupuncture, right? And you decided to go down that path, walk me through what that was like and what your mindset was at that time.
Yeah, so I always consider myself like third generation U.S. acupuncturist. So people that had started and sacrificed a lot to go back to Asia to study and then bring it back here, or Asians that came here with East Asian medicine and were trying to do it in a system that said it's illegal. It was often backdoor, or even when medical doctors were recommending it, they're like, no, you got to go here. No one speaks English. Don't worry about it. This woman's cured people, whatever the story was. So there was a lot of fighting to get acceptance originally. I had this privilege of being able to connect to some of those first people in this country, because I was still around when they were around, getting to experience their knowledge. But at the same token, I'm here now when things have shifted. And 19 years out, I started when I was reasonably young, and acupuncture was for people that were changing careers. I was in school with people that were significantly older than I am now, and that was 20 something years ago. So the field itself, the learning the information, it is not A plus B equals C. It is, you can start at any point and get anywhere, but it has to make sense, and it has to have a rationale behind it. And part of it is not just here's the theory, make it work. Here's the theory, how you understand it is going to change how it works. And in that way, it is ridiculously hard for people to accept who want a linear pathway. When I was in school, I remember that first semester, one of my teachers just saying, just write it down, look at it in 2 years, you know? And because of that, I think that kind of stunted some of the acceptance here in the West, right? So it was something I was very passionate about. But even as a student, I was telling people, oh, you got migraines? Go get acupuncture. And they just, at the time, they go, oh, that idiot, you know?
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, look, we have 50 randomized controlled trials. You're gold standard on migraines and acupuncture. Does that help? Does that, look, I'm not just making this up. You know, and, you know, for me, I loved every minute of the school. One, because it felt like, look, I'm the young one here, but also that there was only a select few people that were walking this path at the time. Clearly, it's grown in acceptance and popularity, and I'm seeing some newer practitioners have an easier go of it, which is nice to see.
That's amazing. Yeah, so you took the path less traveled by. That's a great quote, right?
Somebody should have written something about that, huh?
Yeah, so that's amazing. That gives a great kind of backstory, and I think leading into what you're currently doing with your practice. So when did Charm City Integrative, can you tell me about when that started to come to life, or did you have other things that you did before that led you to this point?
So there was, when I moved down to Baltimore, my goal, it was to help as many people as possible, right? I didn't quantify the number. I think, you know, having some goals that you need to have, like this is step 1, step 2, step 3. Yes, you need to do that to achieve those goals. Setting a goal like that is more of like, well, is that my mission statement? What is, you know, let me just do my best to help as many people as possible. And slowly but surely, I grew a practice here. We expanded 3 times. And with that third expansion, I had continued to network with other practitioners, people that were doing things that were outside of the norm, people that were doing very Western things, people that were practicing functional medicine in a more recognized way. And it became abundantly clear that I could grind 24/7, not see my family at all, and still not make a dent even in the population in Baltimore. You know, like I wouldn't be able to reach that many people and help them. It became very apparent that the current medical system, if you're really sick, if you're dying, if you broke a bone, yes, that's it. But if you want to achieve wellness, that snapshot that you're getting, and please go get your physicals, but you know, that snapshot you get at your physical, my blood work's okay. Oh, this is a little weird. Hey, they're not so happy with my weight. All of that, that's not guiding your health. You got there through everything that happened before that appointment, right? So how can we do things and look at it where this is an interaction? It's a relationship with the center, with the people that are at the center, but the goal is to constantly move you towards health. Now, if you come in and you're banged up and you're hurt, or you work out too hard and you need to recover, or you have autoimmune disorders that are never going to go away, but you need help managing, there needs to be something for that. And I saw little snips of things popping up across the country, and maybe they were targeting a niche group of biohackers, or they were just pushing hormone optimization, or they were just looking at things down this one channel. Cryotherapy came on my radar. That was Mayweather. I saw him on Showtime. I'm like, what was that?
Yeah.
And a few months later, my cousin, who's a personal trainer out in LA, was in for a wedding, and he came over to me and he goes, dude, you got to be one of the first ones on the East Coast to get a cryo chamber. You need it. And, you know, I joked because in the meantime, I was writing out a business plan and I had it on my phone. I'm like, dude, look at number 3. So the idea was, what does acupuncture do from a Western standpoint? The big things that we talk about: improve circulation, reduce inflammation, improve immune system function, right? I know that if I get the blood moving, I'm going to get metabolic waste out. I'm going to get inflammatory cytokines to be processed by the liver and the kidneys and get them out of the bloodstream, get them out of the joint spaces. You're going to feel better.
What would you say is the ratio of people who are visiting you for preventative measures versus post-rehab, or somebody who comes in after they've already been like banged up?
It's a really good mix, and with the pandemic, it's throwing a monkey wrench in my statistics because I have no idea right now, as I'm only offering limited acupuncture, but within that, we had a really healthy mix. I was very surprised. And Canton, I often joke that it doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees outside or there's 3 feet of snow, you're going to see somebody running down the street with, normally with a dog, possibly with their shirt off. Yes. But it was an active community, physically active community. And it made sense to start trying to get people before they completely broke apart to keep them from that, right? So there's an expression in one of our Chinese classics, right? The superior physician treats the disease before it manifests. The average physician treats it when it manifests, and the bad one, or the new one, whatever you want to call it, people are going to, if they're an acupuncturist, going to say you butchered this quote, but it's a bunch of old Chinese translated into modern Chinese into English. But the bad physician is the one that is treating when it's full blown, right? That's right. You're playing catch up there. If you already have the disease, you neglected all the warning signs. If you feel that little twinge when you're lifting a weight and it's not the normal muscle soreness and you just keep powering through it, give it a couple of weeks, you'll tear it. Don't do that. Come in and get the recovery beforehand. So
I'm wondering, for someone who's never had acupuncture, like myself, I'm curious, what is something that they should know or feel confident about if it's their first time, even if they feel like they don't need it?
So, I mean, this is, there's an expression, never ask a barber if you need a haircut. That's not a Chinese expression. That's just good advice. But the idea being that acupuncture, and the reason we can say, oh, it treats this and it treats that and it treats that, is because it's affecting the whole system. So people will come in and they'll say, can you do the point for low back pain? Or can you do the point for fertility or whatever it is? Yeah, there are those point-specific functions. But acupuncture is a whole being medicine, right? So we put the needles in and we're playing with some big physiological changes that happen with other services and other things we can do to ourselves, which is super cool because there's all these crossroads, everything from vigorous workouts to cannabis. All of them trigger things that acupuncture does naturally and systemically. So one of the big things that happens is acupuncture regulates your autonomic nervous system. That's a fancy way of saying that it keeps you from going too far into fight or flight and too far into rest and digest. It kind of gets you into this middle place. It allows you to drop down. And it does that, we would say classically, we've smoothed the flow of chi through the channels and put you back in balance. Now, what we're doing with those needles in your body, after about 10 or 15 minutes, we see that switch flip into that rest and digest mode. Blood vessels are going to open up. So you're going to get more blood circulating around your body, going to those areas that may have been banged up to allow healing. Added benefit, that blood is also going to circle to your digestive system. So you might be coming in for digestive disorders, or maybe you're not. And I'm getting more blood to the intestines to pick up more nutrients. I'm also getting more blood to the lungs to pick up more oxygen. So now I have nutritious, oxygenated blood getting to tissue that isn't normally getting it, which triggers your body to get more relaxed, but it also helps heal tissue that may be affected. Other things that happen during this rest and digest stage, your neurotransmitters normalize, your serotonin and dopamine levels, which so many people, especially now with COVID, right? The stress of the goddamn thing is worse than the disease. It's worse than being locked at home. It's the, when am I going to go back to what I was doing? So we start to see fluctuations in that, anxiety and depression. So acupuncture kind of hits that reset button on those neurotransmitters. You start to feel better. Another crazy thing is if we were to hook you up to some kind of brain scan while you're laying there with the needles in you, you enter this stage where your alpha and alpha theta brainwaves start cycling back and forth. That's what happens in deep meditation.
How often should someone who, let's say, they're not exercising, like they're not a fitness professional, they're kind of just living that average lifestyle.
Yeah.
How often should someone do acupuncture versus someone who maybe is a little bit more active?
So it really, and all of our services, and I would say healthcare as a whole, I think there needs to be more of this interaction between the practitioner and the patient, right? Mm-hmm. So what does that mean for, like, how often is a really rough one? Questions like that, it's like, well, what are your health goals?
Right.
What is going on your day to day? Maybe that average person is meditating and eating everything that's non-inflammatory to them and buying whole food sourced, products.
Yes.
And maybe they're independently wealthy and they don't have job stress.
Right.
So that's going to look very different.
Yeah, it requires a consultation with you, right? Like that's really what it requires. And I can kind of relate to that in terms of when people ask me about exercising, like how often should I do high intensity interval training? Well, I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your injuries. I don't know, we need to talk a little bit more in depth about your goals, etc. So I'm assuming it's very similar in terms of
very similar.
Consultating with you to figure out the right approach.
And that's the thing. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine this morning, talking about Ben Greenfield and the Dave Aspreys and the big name people that are like pushing all this crazy stuff forward. On one hand, it's amazing, right? But we all don't have. That's not all our career paths. That's not all our lifestyles. Ben Greenfield can work out like a fiend and get all this crazy equipment and do all these crazy things because that's who he is, right? So that guy that has a 9-to-5 that just wants to feel better and be healthier doesn't need to beat themselves up because they're not sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber and they didn't go out and kill the deer that they're eating. No, it's okay. Everyone can be good where they are, but we can also do things to improve that health. So normally if somebody's coming in for maintenance, which is, I think, more of like the concept that you were trying to see, even that's going to look a little bit different. So if you're in your 20s and you're feeling great, maybe I see you once a quarter. If you're a little older, things start to creak a little bit and you notice that, maybe you're coming in weekly. Maybe it's twice a month. If it's something acute, you step off a curb. Maybe I'm going to see you 3 times that week, 3 times the next week, but hopefully you're out the door saying great things about me again. It shouldn't be, on one hand, I'd love everybody to come in every day. I really do enjoy treating people and interacting with them. On the other hand, it's not practical for people's lifestyles.
Right.
So what fits your lifestyle? And when we talk about the term evidence-based medicine, which is going to be the new buzzword, and I already see other healthcare practitioners throwing it around and using it wrong. It's not just about clinical research. Yes, clinical research is a big part of that, but it's what are the patient's belief systems? What do they want out of life? It's like we have these big discussions about hooking people up to, or, do not resuscitate orders, right? If somebody doesn't want to live anymore, that's a big decision, right? But it's also a big thing, like, as well as I do, you can't force somebody to work out. If they just don't want to do it, they're not going to do it.
Right.
So what does that person want? What is their main goal? Hey, Tom, I just want to be able to walk to the end of the block and pick up my mail. Okay. That's more reasonable than somebody who is barely moving going like, I gotta get into Ironman.
Right.
I'm 75 years old, never ran in my life, but now I got to do this, and it's not saying that it's impossible, but that therapy is going to require different things for that person than it is for somebody that's just coming in for maintenance. So
100%.
It's hard to say exactly what every individual needs.
Right.
It's also hard to say what is going to be the most therapeutic thing, which is why, I have 14 different services we currently offer at the office.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about those. I know, so we talked a lot about acupuncture. We touched on cryotherapy a little bit more. If you want to dive into that a little bit deeper, because I, again, have never done it. I know it's becoming a little bit more popular.
Yeah, we'll get you in when we reopen.
I know it's becoming a little bit more popular. I've seen some of my friends doing it, and obviously like athletes, and they definitely rave about it. And I know you have other services as well. So touch on those a bit.
So first, let me say the principles that I use to choose these devices, these therapies, was the same as acupuncture. Does it move the blood? Does it reduce inflammation? Does it hit the body with similar effects via a different route? So cryotherapy has been around since 1978. It started gaining popularity probably about 5 or 6 years ago in the US. And I'm surprised it took that long because, as Americans, we want results now. We want something quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing it. 3 minutes, you step in the chamber, you step out, something happened to you. You feel different. It is probably the biggest bang for your buck that we offer in our office because the 3 minutes is there, you're out, you walk out the door, you feel different. What cryotherapy does is it's not cold for the sake of being cold, right? So you might have seen it. I know it made its rounds all over the health and fitness industry. There was an article a few years ago called The End of the RICE Method. So RICE stands for rest, ice, compression, elevation, right? Yep. That's how we deal with injuries. Their big issue was the ice. And what happens when we put ice on is we get vasoconstriction. Yes, we do reduce inflammation in the area. The problem is the blood is the thing that heals that tissue. Now, the inflammation is a natural response to keep our body from moving an injured area. But when we artificially, for too long, freeze it or keep it cold, we shut down any in and outflow of that blood, any ability for the body to kind of get that inflammation out naturally on its own. However, with the cryotherapy, because it's so cold and it's such a short period of time, this intense cold basically squeezes everything like a sponge. So from the skin, the fascia, the muscles, the blood vessels, the joint spaces, that all gets wrung out, pushes that blood, whatever kind of thing was sitting in that tissue, back to the core of the body to get processed. When you get out, your body literally thinks it was freezing to death. And because it was so short, it can flip the switch, open up all the blood vessels, and push fresh blood back to that tissue. So it's this real quick 1-2 punch. So you get some pain relief quickly from the squeeze, but then the fresh blood comes in to help it heal. Now, the other thing that happens, and it hit me hard the first time I drove to Delaware to try it, I walked out of the machine and I was like on top of the world. There's an endorphin thump that happens. Part of the freezing process, your body thinks you're going to freeze to death, so it's going to make it a good ride. It's going to fill you full of hormones and neurotransmitters that make you feel good. So you leave feeling amazing. We actually have a lot of people that come in to use it as a workout primer as well. So not just for the recovery, but rather than having that nitrous oxide, highly caffeinated thing, they're coming in doing that. But, and just like that, our other services all kind of play in that realm. So our red light therapy, it's using red light spectrum and near infrared to penetrate into the skin and the upper levels of the muscle to cause those cells to start kicking out more cellular energy. Everybody remembers from 7th grade bio, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The mitochondria gets stimulated by that light, starts kicking out more ATP, cellular energy, which your body can then use to reduce inflammation, increase collagen production, help with workout recovery. Our salt chamber, everyone asks if it's a float or a sensory deprivation chamber. I really wish it was. I would love to have those. That was on my radar when we opened this version. I said, we'll bring it back in 2.0. It requires a bigger footprint, a lot of plumbing. But our salt chamber is based off of salt caves. So what it does, over a half an hour, you inhale roughly 3 tablespoons of microfine salt dust. That coats the mucous membranes from the sinuses and the nose all the way down into the lungs. It'll dry out certain bacteria and kill it. It'll break apart any excess mucus, and it'll help reduce inflammation in those mucous membranes so you can breathe deeper and better. Therefore, you're getting more oxygen into your body, so it has a systemic effect as well as just great for asthma, allergies, cold and flu season.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you mentioned with cryotherapy, that's about a 3-minute process, right?
Yeah.
And then the red light therapy, that's probably what, about 10 minutes or
20?
20
seems to be clinically the research that we've seen. 20 minutes is a good therapeutic dose.
And then with the salt
we have you do
water,
a front and a back.
Okay. So you switch positions, and then the salt water is 30 minutes.
Well, that's just dry salt air, so 30 minutes.
Okay, got you. Kind of giving people an idea, of the different services that tend to provide similar outcomes, but also have a varying time frame that they can come in. So you mentioned cryo is probably the best bang for your buck. I was curious too. You mentioned the rice concept. Do you think that people were icing injuries for too long at some point?
For too many days after the injury and for too long, right?
Yeah.
So, if you ever watch like almost any baseball movie, at some point you see a pitcher walking around with bags of ice taped to his knees.
Yeah.
And from what we've heard in clinic, anybody that's playing on a semi-pro or professional level, they're used to having that bag of ice on there for like hours in some cases, right? So and there's great research about cold immersion, right? Ice baths.
Mm-hmm.
Even those, sitting in there for more than 20 minutes is not therapeutic anymore. We've gone too far.
Right.
It's like, look, one aspirin might help the headache. 20 of them is going to cause some problems. We need to have that with almost anything that we apply, right? We should stay hydrated. You start guzzling water, at some point, your kidneys are going to shut down.
Yeah.
Please, and anybody that listens to this, it's got to be like 5 gallons.
Yeah,
you can't do it.
It's got to be a lot really fast too. Like just like sit there and take it.
You're not going to do it. If you're thirsty, please drink. If you want to stay hydrated, please drink water. Just don't funnel it down your mouth
for hours,
5 gallons at a time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's true.
Sorry.
That's true. That's a great way to look at it, because I think oftentimes, we don't relate things to taking 2 Tylenol versus 200 Tylenol to staying in an ice bath for 2 minutes versus 2 hours. So I think that that's a really helpful way for people to understand it a little bit better. Are there any particular risks that come with these type of things other than doing it for prolonged periods of time? Because to me, honestly, it seems a little bit scary.
So with any medical procedure, there are risks. For what we chose at the office, I tried to pick the lowest risk services. So acupuncture, yes, we're using needles. They are not like syringes. We're talking about something that's the width of 2 or 3 hairs. They're not going deep into organ tissue. They're single-use surgical grade stainless steel. They come sterilized. Cryotherapy, the biggest risk, and this is why we screen and have people fill out an intake, is something cardiovascular, right? The idea that when we're constricting those blood vessels, the blood pressure is going to go up slightly. So we want to make sure that people, even with high blood pressure, don't have it spiked so high that we cause it to just, pop.
Right.
It has never happened, but it's a concern that we know exists.
What about someone dealing with anxiety prior to doing?
The first time people go into the cryo, there is some of this almost like a roller coaster, like I'm about to get on a roller coaster kind of feeling. It's part of the reason we offer so many different services, because once again, getting back to that evidence-based thing, if this is something that just terrifies you, well, that's okay. Look, this is less terrifying for you, right?
Yeah.
We have a far infrared sauna. You hate cold? Do you like warm?
Yeah.
Okay. We can work with that. The other thing is the unit we bought. There's a bunch of companies making them. The unit we got is from Poland. It's considered the gold standard of machines. And it is a class 3 medical device in Europe. Here, it's still considered spa equipment, which is insane to me. But there are at least 5 ways to stop the machine between the operator and the patient. So if at any point somebody wants out, they're out. I mean, it takes a split second for that machine to stop. You can push that door open anytime and get out if you need to.
That's
so
good to know.
we do take the safety very seriously, and we want to make sure people have a good time.
Right.
The other thing is we can adjust the temperature on it. So my office always runs people through at the warmest therapeutic dose, which is negative 120 Celsius, which translates to negative 184 Fahrenheit. I know that's kind of funny. It's not really warm at all, but relatively the machine goes to negative 256 Fahrenheit. All of the studies have been done between negative 110 Celsius and negative 140 Celsius. So it gets even colder than those studies have been done. But once again, getting back to that asprin analogy, you don't necessarily need that temperature to get effect.
Right. Okay. Good to know. This is great information. So I know another service that you provide is cupping, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, since the whole Michael Phelps thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael Phelps. You got me on TV the next day.
Let's talk about that.
So this is the crazy thing, right? So cupping has I taught at 2 acupuncture schools, and one of them was in Manhattan, and the student body was comprised of foreign students from around the world. It was great. It was like the UN of acupuncture schools, and when we taught cupping, everyone would come up to me and go, "Grandma used to do that." Now, cupping, we're not even sure exactly where it comes from. More than likely, it came into China through the Silk Trade route, but we can't figure out the exact country of origin. Could be Greece, could be Persia, could be Egypt. It is possibly older, and it is most likely, I should say, older than a formalized system of acupuncture. We have references of needle therapy going back very far, but to say formalized systems, we're talking about 2,700 years old. Mm-hmm. Cupping has references over 4,000 years old. Even in the New World, South America calls it ventosa, right? The Quran mentions it. If you go and watch the 1920s film Zorba the Greek, they did it there. The Godfather Part 2, Fredo as a kid, there's a flashback to Nona treating him because he was sickly as a kid on the kitchen table, putting a cup on his chest, right? So that's more of just weird trivia. But the idea being that it's not just to give you these perfectly round hickeys on your body. The idea is that, one, it's separating the skin from the fascia from the muscle, and creating this void where stagnant blood that isn't getting circulated through the tissue well, up and out, where your body can break it up like it would any other bruise. It's not technically a bruise, but it does look like one. And it's all in the same family.
I mean, how good is that though for the skin, like the outer layer? Is that like harmful?
So you'd be surprised. Modern day, they've adapted a lot of things to be for facial, where they won't do the suction as strong. They'll use a smaller cup to actually produce collagen in the face. We don't do it at our office. We don't aim at that spa or medi spa type area, but it does work. It's good stuff. So you can tailor that bruise based on the severity or the strength of that suction. Now, you'll see people that have really good circulation and they don't even really bruise that much. And you'll see some people that it looks like they stood in front of a baseball pitching machine. Mm-hmm. And you never really know until you do it. I used to say, the fair skinned people are going to bruise more. And then I had a South American patient that came in and she had very dark skin. It looked like looked like she was hit with like high pitched baseballs. So it it's more about how the circulatory system beneath the skin is working.
Gotcha. You also want to get into how this has now affected us dealing with COVID-19, how this has affected people coping with and dealing with maybe depression, more anxiety, and their overall health.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, and I wish I was talking more about this aspect prior to COVID. All of our services do give you some psychological, emotional kind of benefit, balancing out those neurotransmitters, those feel-good compounds. But I think, and I think I was supposed to give a lecture in Sarasota about this, but it was canceled because of COVID. Yeah. This idea of combining these things in a stackable way, right? We talk about what's your stack, right? Biohackers, health and fitness people, they swallow that pill, they call it a stack, or they have this specific workout stack. How we stack these therapies together to achieve this is where we kind of get that creative part. We have some pre-made packages that we know we like, but we do work with people going, look, I think this is best for you. You said you like this. We can do more of this here. As far as services, I'll list them off. If there's something you really want me to speak on, I will. So we have exercise with oxygen therapy, which is a way to rapidly increase the amount of oxygen in your body. It's a moderate exercise. We used to offer mild hyperbaric, and this replaced it. Mild hyperbaric is great, but to do it the right way, you need to be in it 6 to 7 days a week for about an hour. At that point, you should be buying or renting one for your home. EWAT, as we call it, exercise with oxygen therapy, takes about 15 minutes. And we cycle you through short sprints at high altitude, low oxygen air. And then we have you recover at 95% pure oxygen. And your body starts to stack oxygen into the liquid part of the blood, which is exactly what the hyperbaric would do by forcing it in with pressure. So you actually can get more oxygen in your blood during this 15-minute workout than you can in an hour, and it lasts longer. So you only need to come in, if you're doing that seriously, about twice a week, and you will have excess oxygen just floating around in your blood, fighting off infections, nourishing whatever tissue it bumps into, getting into the microcapillaries where the red blood cells can't go, and knocking loose metabolic waste. So it has these amazing benefits there. It's a hard one to talk about without seeing it.
Right. What would you say, though, for people who might be dealing with maybe exercise-induced asthma, or people who don't already have a great oxygen flow? Does that help improve it? Or
it does. And this is the great thing about the company we use is called Live O2. If you really want to go out, I was calling it Live O2 for years. And then I spoke to them and they're like, no, it's Live. But here's what happens. We don't have to have you sprint. We can keep you on the pure oxygen. You don't even have to pedal. As long as you're breathing in some oxygen, you're going to increase that. So what we would do is start slow and low, where maybe you're pedaling part of the time. And then maybe we do 1 or 2 short sprints. The idea is to customize that for people. Now, if we want to get really savvy on the other end, because we can help those people that are, especially the immunocompromised ones, sometimes you do too much, you give them too much of a good thing and they have a negative reaction. Oftentimes we call it a healing crisis. We want to avoid those if we can. Go to the edge of that and then let them build rather than push them through it and make them feel like crap when they leave.
Yeah.
But on the other end, for athletes, well, are you a sprinter? Are you a marathon runner? Do you play center, or are you a running back? Okay, well, you move differently, so we can train you differently on this machine. We have a lot of amazing boxers here in Baltimore, so they love that machine. They'll get on that a couple times a week and really up their cardiovascular system and be supercharged before a fight.
That's amazing too. And it could be helpful for people when we do have the chance to start traveling again, for us on the East Coast, or if you're visiting somewhere that has like a higher altitude, or you like hiking, right? That could be helpful to maybe take a couple of those sessions prior to doing something like that.
And a lot of people do. And a lot of people will use it for that, right? So we don't have the concerns so if you scuba dive, you don't want to scuba dive because you'll have excess nitrogen in your body 24 hours before you fly. The oxygen is always in your bloodstream. You need it. You breathe it in all day long. And having a little bit extra is not going to affect flights and things like that. Yeah. So that's kind of a nice thing to do.
Awesome. Cool. So what advice might you give to people right now? I know it is very different times. So when we are able to kind of get back to some sort of quote unquote normalcy, obviously we'll be able to take more advantage of these services. But during this current time when we have more time at home, and we're not able to use all of the services, what are some ways to incorporate them at home, or even connecting with you to get the feel for them before actually being able to visit the office?
So by all means, feel free to reach out. My website's charmcityintegrative.com. You can contact us there. You can contact us on all our social media platforms for tips and things like that. You can do some of the stuff. It's not going to be as intense as we offer at the office. There are plenty of home cupping kits. I currently am halfway through writing a home cupping class, so hopefully I'll launch that soon. I have a free meditation class because I think a lot of things that we can do right now, as long as you're going to be sitting at home, doing it with a mindful meditation practice is going to help your mood. It's going to help you deal with just being a little bit stuck. And it's going to mimic some of the effects that you get from some of the therapies that we do. I like cold showers. Certainly it was sad to not have any nitrogen in the office, but daily cold showers, there's plenty of good research on it. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, I love her so much. She did one of the best lectures on cryotherapy on Joe Rogan's podcast, but she constantly talks about heat shock proteins, cold shock proteins, and all these things, that exposing ourselves to the elements, and in a way, a lot of things that we need to be doing are getting back out into nature. So like a lot of my office, you get the same red light from the sun. You get the same effects from jumping in a cold lake. And I'm not condoning that. Please speak with your PCP before you do that. But those kind of things, we're so removed that I feel like you got to come to my office to just get that shove back to normalcy, right? So we've artificially done this by living inside. So even if you have only a window, go sit with the window open, breathe some of that fresh air, get some of that sun on your face if it's sunny out.
Wear sunscreen, right?
Well, so yes and no. And I have two amazing dermatologists that I know and I refer to all the time. We do need some exposure. So a good rule of thumb, 15 minutes a day uncovered, not at high insulation times. That's going to be early afternoon, but morning and evening. That's all it takes, right? So we live in a lifestyle now where we get up before the sun's up, we go to our car, we drive to work, we stay in work, we get out of work, and especially in the winter, it's dark already. And we go home, we go inside, right? We're not getting that experience. Same thing happens in the summer. It's light out, but we're not going to go from an air-conditioned house to just, we'll just leave the windows down. No, it's 98 degrees and 100% humidity in Baltimore. I'm keeping the windows up and putting the AC on. So we've regulated our climate. We've regulated the amount of light we're getting exposed to. So yes, wear sunscreen if you're out past those 15 minutes, but give yourself some time when the sun's not too high to be exposed to it. If you want to even get weirder and out there, go stand in grass or on bare earth with no shoes on. You'll discharge static electricity. They call it grounding. It gets very weird.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
this is great advice. Like I'm loving this. I'm like jotting notes down. I'm gonna go do all of this for sure. With the cold shower, do you recommend like in the morning, in the evening? How long should the shower last?
So start small.
Okay.
One, if you can do 15 seconds to start daily, this is another thing with what are your goals. If you want to wake up in the morning, a blast of cold water at the end of your shower will wake you up. If you're trying to calm down your nervous system, believe it or not, there's some evidence that shows a blast before nighttime. Of course, you're going to have to warm back up, will also help. I know some hardcore people will take their whole shower cold. I'm sure they've used a lot less water.
Yeah.
But and there's probably scrubbing pretty feverishly to get out.
I like to do like a cold blast at the end sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I heard that it helps close up like your hair follicles, your skin, and everything like that after you've taken like a really hot bath. Kind of helps close things back up.
So, well, you know that, and we're not going to have any kind of gunk get into our pores and cause more blackheads and those kind of things too. You know, it's one of those things where you can work up a tolerance to it. I think, you know, we have such an aversion for things that are uncomfortable. And that's, you know, that's that we can talk about our mindset with all of that. But slowly working up to it, I think, is a good way to see some benefits. We can talk about the formation of brown adipose tissue or brown fat. So there's plenty of benefits to cold exposure. And a lot of them can be free, you know, and same thing with dietary changes, right? We have a nutritionist. I always feel like it's easier to get somebody to change their religion than it is to change their diet, you know, and even if it's a simple change, you know, people are so resistant to that. They hold their identity in what they eat in some cases.
Right. You know? It's a habit. It's hard to get people to break habits, you know, whether it's positive or negative or unhealthy or healthy, I should say. So yeah, great advice. So at home, take your shoes off, walk in the grass, get outside at least 15 minutes with no sunscreen, or you can be out longer, obviously, if you're in high
and you don't have to be naked.
Yeah,
it can be just skin that's exposed.
Yeah, don't walk outside naked unless you.
It wouldn't be the first time it's happened in Baltimore, though.
Cold showers, adjusting your diet, meditation, obviously. I'm excited to hear more about your class that you're going to be coming up with. So we'll be sure to follow you on social media and your website to find out more about that. And you mentioned too that you were an author of You Got Sick, right? I want to bring that up because I'm interested in knowing what that is as well.
So I was approached by a publishing company to do a rewrite because you know, and thinking about this, I wanted to put together simple and fast services that could help people, knowing that a lot of the stuff is new and out there. Most things are coming from the realm of traditional East Asian medicine. You're probably not going to have those herbs just laying around your house unless you grew up in a household that was using Chinese herbs your whole life. That being said, certain practices, even like getting a sweat, you know, if you have a cold or a flu, to raise your internal temperature, that fever is your body fighting back. So breaking that sweat is normally a sign. Traditionally, they call the surface of the skin like a battle zone between the cold, the pathogen, and your body. So when you sweat, you've driven that pathogen out of the battlefield. So I wrote that book with the intention of cold and flu season was coming up. I'll answer questions repeatedly about certain things. And I even talk about home gua sha and home cupping in that book.
Okay.
Just because these are things that classically, traditionally, you do before you even saw a physician in Asia. You know, the acupuncture was something you'd go for. The moxibustion was something you'd go for. But all the other services, grandma might have done it. Somebody in your household was doing it. And in a lot of cases, they were so effective that you never had to go to the doctor, which was great. So we were trying to bring that information a little bit more forefront and a little bit more digestible for somebody that didn't grow up in that culture. The rewrite hopefully will be more about staying healthy. I think when I wrote that book, it was to get something out quick. I think more now, people need to learn how to build up their immune system, right? We train our muscles. Some of us are training our brain. What can we do to keep our immune system healthy is going to be the next forefront, especially if we're constantly worried looking back over our shoulder with a pandemic, you know?
Absolutely. Yes, I love it. Such wonderful advice. All of this has been amazing. I've learned so much. I know that everyone listening has definitely learned something. And I'm so excited that we've had the opportunity to connect in this whole wellness initiative. And before I let you go, I just want to ask one final question, tying it all back together as to what continues to be your why. Why do you continue to do what you do every day?
So, I think I'm trying to be a helper. I want to be a helper. And I'm constantly looking at things and constantly trying to change the office. And now I'm realizing more than ever, things have to be not just tied to a brick and mortar place, but how can I impact people's health? How can I improve their lives in various avenues? It's why I wanted to do the podcast. It's how can you interact with people on a bigger scale to help them feel better? And I firmly believe that if you feel better, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, you're going to be a better person, which is then going to have repercussions and help other people. So if you can do that and you impact people positively, they're going to turn around and reciprocate. So hopefully I want the why is to help people and create this ripple effect.
Well, you've definitely helped me, and you've made a positive impact on me just by being on the show and being a new friend of mine. And I can't wait for us to collaborate and get back out there once things open up a little bit more and just find ways to help continuing helping others and offering these services. So Dr. Tom, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
All right, we'll talk soon. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
And that does it, guys. Thank you so much for listening through to the end of that episode. I hope you'll share this with your friends, your family, and your network so we can continue growing this community even more and hear the stories that have yet to be told. Please let me know your thoughts too. Reach out. Tell me what you've learned. Tell me what's resonated with you. And let me know who you want to hear from next. I can't wait to talk to you guys soon.